Seeking the wise.
With Aaron and Alexander discussing the Just philosophy.
Covering self-development, emotional processing, conscious relationships, and 5 levels of overall wellness.
In the virtual studio again, I am Aaron, along with Alexander.
So good to be here.
By the time this episode comes out, Alexander will be the birthday boy. It might even be a little bit after his birthday, so sending best wishes to you, Alexander, on your next rotation around the sun. And when everybody watches or hears this, hopefully they send you the same. Of course, we'll give you a shout out before that, so you get all the love.
Well, much love to everybody. And yes, I'm looking forward to traveling to Hawaii to see my boys, and going to bring in my 53rd year on the island. And we'll be doing some recording while I'm out there as well, is the plan too. So we'll be bringing some of the island vibes to you all.
Yeah, loving this new format. I think it's definitely resonating with people a lot better than just the audio. We're getting up with the times, so it's working. I'm liking it as well.
We definitely appreciate everybody's feedback as well. So any love that you can throw us, and even we're open to suggestions, but we are having fun getting into this format and playing with it, and we're going to continue to expand on it.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because we are really taking the next step in our marketing effort and getting the word out there, because we really haven't done too much. We've been relying on word of mouth, and so we are creating Facebook Reels of the different clips of the episodes. Now that we have video, we'll be doing the same on YouTube. So if you aren't a YouTube subscriber, go ahead and please subscribe, like our videos, so it incentivizes YouTube to show it to more people. And then also when you see our Reels and our Facebook, I'm not really sure what they call them, videos, snippets or whatever, make sure that you give us some love on there, so it again incentivizes those various formats to be shared more often. And again, it's kind of like the same as a word of mouth, but just word of technology. It goes a little faster.
Well said.
So yeah, over the past week or two, Alexander and I have both had experiences with our family, and we've said a lot on this podcast that family really shows you where you are, where you've come from, and how far you've come from there. It's a big reminder of the environmental energy that we were in as children, if we are talking about our parents or our siblings. And so we both had experience about this that we were chatting about before this podcast, and I think we're going to kind of use those experiences to get into the subject of this episode, which is around support. And I think a large amount of the focus will be around how do you support when you really want to lead or be the teacher, which I can tend to fall into, if I'm being honest. And I think a lot of people out there, when they come upon something that is a new perspective for them, and it's like snaps all this new energy and new ways of looking at the world into place, they want to share that with people. And there's nothing wrong with that, but it can come off as very teachy and forceful in just its energy form, and like I can relate to that. But I also want to get into how to support people in various certain circumstances, like with people's dreams, like if we're talking about children, or even our spouse or friends, how to support people in that way, or when people are in an emotional reaction. Because I also fall into that as well. I'm not great at nurturing, and so I think that's a large part of this conversation as well, Alexander.
Yeah, this is a very important subject. Most people see family as some level of importance right off the bat, but a lot of people have resistance to their families, and a lot of people leave their families, lose contacts with families, and there are times in our lives when that may be necessary. But there's still a whole lot to be said for when you are able to come back and be around that person or around that situation and not be as affected as you have in the past. And this is, I want to bring the word love in here, that again, I like to bring to the focus of there's many different definitions of love. And one of the main ones from my view, or the Just Philosophy's view, is that if you want to call it love, then you may not be looking for something in return. And so when we talk about support, it's not that you're supporting them because you want them to support you. It's not that you're supporting them because you have an agenda. It's supporting them because you feel like that feeds you as much as it seems to feed them. And many times people have agendas when they play supportive roles, and they keep score even. So I'm looking forward to really getting into some of the more gritty parts of support, and when the challenges are there, how to be supportive when you may not be in agreement with the subject or the person or that type of thing. Because the main objective here is that if you want to show somebody a different path or a different way, then many times it helps if you're able to show them support in an area of their life that they feel strong in, and maybe they can play that teacher or sharer of information role, and you show them how to receive. Because this is similar to listening. You don't yell at somebody and teach them to listen to you. You practice listening to them. You exemplify it. And we're also going to break down the difference between being the judge and being the investigator.
Yeah, and it's very fitting that we're recording this today because it is National Middle Child Day, which my sister reminded me of, but it's also National Vinyl Record Day. So we got a lot going for us today.
Yeah, I didn't know that. Very cool.
And so the way you brought up love, I would say that just in my definitions of what I've been exposed to, if we're going to put it into terms that more people might recognize, I think the way we talk about love is actually like unconditional love. Like, you want to support somebody to be their authentic selves, to grow into their authentic selves. And that really is hands off from you. Like, you're not trying to control them. You're not trying to tell them what's best for them. You're really just loving them and supporting them in who they are and who they want to be. Now, I guess my question for you is like, where's the boundary of that? Because obviously if they want to be a drug dealer, you don't want to support that. I mean, of course we are getting into like good and bad, but there are some behaviors that I think we can maybe say that might not be in their best interest if they are working towards their authentic self. And again, that is a judgment there. So, but I don't know if is it anybody's plan through the divine to be a drug dealer. I mean, I guess it is because it exists, but we wouldn't want to support them to grow into that role, right?
Well, I think this is a great jumping off point, because the whole point about us bringing this in around support is there's many times it's challenging to be supportive. And I know that I've had to really work on my development of support. And part of it was learning and seeing clearly that acceptance doesn't equal condoning or approval of. And then when I realized that with acceptance, then I said, okay, this subject's support here. So even taking a hypothetical like a drug dealer or whatever, something that is viewed negatively by some people, see, to be able to support a person's entrepreneurism, see, it doesn't have to be the specific thing, but you can bring something to highlight to say, I really respect your entrepreneurism and your ability to be able to create and monetize, for yourself. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you're supporting exactly the way they're using their entrepreneurism. And again, this is how so many people get tore down, because they get judged for certain things, but there's a lot of things behind that curtain that could be appreciated. And this is what we're going to be dancing in, is how to find ways to support people that you care about while standing in your own integrity and not necessarily agreeing with exactly the way that they're doing it. And this is a great example of being the example rather than being the teacher. And we're going to expand on that as well.
And the Just philosophy focuses on like how energy works and interacts in these situations. And I wanted to bring that up because I could see a scenario where you have somebody in your family who is wanting to become a drug dealer or is dabbling in that. And if everybody brings resistance to that, they're most likely going to still do it, but they're going to take it out of it being seen. And I mean, this is how the black market works. When something becomes illegal, like we can bring in light bulbs now, incandescent light bulbs that are now essentially illegal in the United States. There's like people are still going to want them and need them, and there's still uses for them, but they're only going to be brought like there's probably going to be crime around light bulbs now, light bulb sales, because they're going to go underground because it's energy. When energy is being resisted, it's going to find a pathway around it. But if we're talking about that person pulling away from their family, they're still doing it, just not in your awareness. And so you're not helping the situation. So if your intention is to help, that's when you really want to consider looking at the energy of your interaction with them, how, the words that you're saying. And this is where, this podcast and the Just philosophy helps.
Yeah. And here I want to bring in an example of, take it off of like somebody being a drug dealer. And let's say somebody won't do the exact opposite and be a cop. And say that there's a man and woman married and the male wants to become a police officer. And the female is struggling with how to support her husband in this because she really don't want him to be a police officer. So this gets into conscious communication. And, most people would just go into reaction and resistance, and that doesn't help the processing of the situation. But if the focus could be brought in to say that the wife just says to the husband something like, I see by what you're saying that you really want to be of service to people. And I think that is a beautiful thing, and maybe protect and save people in situations. And maybe the male would be like, yeah, that's very important to me. And then possibly the female could say, well, what about an EMT or a first responder that you could really play an important role with helping people, but you wouldn't be in the same kind of danger? So this is just a suggestion of how, again, she's being supportive in what he really wants to accomplish, but she's not focusing so much on the specific way at this point of the conversation of showing support. And see, I've seen time and time again, like the husband in this situation relax his focus on the specific of being a police officer, even if it's for a second, to just be open to that. What about being an EMT or first responder of some type, or, a fireman or whatever it is? And that may have not even been in his scope of processing. So, but the key here was that the resistance wasn't created right away by an emotional reaction, and there was able to be support. And that's what I really want the main focus of this podcast to be, for people to see and be that investigator of how can I be supportive in this situation, even though I can tell that I've had some resistance to what this person is saying or doing.
Yeah, and you can see how that would make it seem like they're a team rather than it's him versus her. But in a way, support is a lot like love, where we're saying you may not call it love if you're looking for something in return. Support doesn't mean that you're going to get your way. He may not become an EMT instead of a cop. Maybe his energetic design supports him being a cop, and that's, his divine makeup is supporting that, and that's what he's supposed to do in this lifetime. We don't know, but so he may go and do that, And then like, where does that leave her? Or in her situation, I mean, I guess she has the decision. Can she live with it and support him because he made a decision? And if you're going to stay together, there has to be support there. There has to be respect there, or it's just going to tear away at the fabric of the relationship, right?
Yes, because in this level of communication, especially about things this important, the two people aren't always going to agree. So again, this is where the practice of acceptance comes in. That yes, she's either got to accept that he's going to go be a law officer, and that puts him in a certain amount of danger, and I've got to learn to accept that's just going to be part of my life, or accept that I can't deal with this, and I'm going to communicate this. And I like to suggest not in ultimatums, but just in a way to say that obviously I can see that this is important to you, but I can't put myself, or my children through the concerns that that's going to create. And these are realistic conversations that people have day in and day out. It's just that we're hoping to reach people in a way to stay soft, stay the investigator, stay open, and stay away from the confrontation and the friction. And normally that happens when somebody shows complete resistance. And another important thing in these types of conversations is to take breaks from the conversation, to say, I need to just process what was just said for a day or two, and then let's set a day and time to get back together and talk about this. Time is something that most people don't realize is so important for conscious communication. And many times we have the urge to want to solve it right then. And that's what the emotions push. But emotions and conscious communications can't coexist simultaneously. So that's why we, through the Just Philosophy, suggest that as soon as you see the emotions show up, then agree to discuss this at another time. Because the ideal communication is when neither party is emotional and you're able to discuss it from a very supportive yet integrity-like position.
Yeah, and that just gets into also supporting people when they get in the space of getting emotional. And so when that happens, you are supporting the relationship and the other person to process their emotions, because when we're not processing and we're continuing the argument or the conversation or whatever it is, and it's heated, nobody's listening, and most of the time things are being made worse because things are being said through, like we talk about goggles or filters, emotional filters of what the person is currently experiencing. So if consciousness is the intention, that's not going to yield the results that you're looking for, right?
Yes. And in this first, 20 minutes before we get into our full episode, I wanted to make sure to mention a word that goes hand in hand with support is boundaries as well. So in order to be an optimal supporter, you got to be very well versed in communicating your boundaries. And this is where getting into this male and female that we're talking in the hypothetical of wanting to be a police officer. The female was able to speak her truth and say, hey, I want to support you in being of service to people. How about these options? And then you brought up with it, hypothetically, maybe he just really wants to be a police officer. Then, this is where she has to decide and he has to decide where their boundaries are and what is going to be accepted. The key is to be honest with yourself of whether you can truly accept it or not. And many people confuse acceptance to non-reaction, and they're not the same things. And we're really going to get into dissecting that in the full conversation. I've seen many clients do this, that they're practicing acceptance, but really all they're doing is not reacting, or they're learning to not react in the moment, but they're still carrying the resistance internally. And in acceptance, you don't carry any resistance internally or externally. So I think that's important to see that support and boundaries walk hand in hand and are very important to one another.
Absolutely. And I think in the complete conversation, we can also get into how this all wraps into a subject that we just talked about on integrity, which I think goes hand in hand with boundaries. because it's all pointing, or these are all things that you utilize when you're moving in the direction of what you're intending, intentional living. And we'll get into, how to support people's dreams and give space for emotional reactions. We'll get into more of the tools and techniques of how to do those things. So appreciate you all joining us on this free episode of the Wise podcast.
Much love.
Thank you for listening to this free version of the Wise podcast. To hear the complete conversation and go deeper into the application of the tools and techniques of the Just Philosophy, head on over to wisewisepodcast.com and become a premium member. You'll get to hear all of our complete conversations, including the complete episodes of our Inward Journey story series and our entire back catalog, and continue your self-development journey with us. We honor your dedication to self-growth, overall wellness, and continuing to ask the wise.
And remember, gradual changes over long periods of time equals lasting results.
Continue on your self-growth journey by visiting thejustphilosophy.com, where you are able to connect personally by booking a private consultation with Alexander in person, by phone, or Zoom. Uncover your authentic self more easily with a human design or destiny card consultation. Here you will gain information about your energetic makeup, personality, and your higher self, as well as navigating your way through your relationships. There are also multiple types of reports available for purchase that help you gain insight into your career, relationships, and opportunities for self-growth. The site also allows you to view a calendar of Alexander's live performances and class schedule, peruse other products such as shirts, CDs, and finally, the revolutionary VibroTune vibrational sound therapy tables. These contoured therapy tables allow you to bathe in a vibrational sonic bath of frequencies, bringing you into alignment on all levels. You will be feeling and hearing calming music synced through vibration and frequency. So again, you can grab all this goodness at thejustphilosophy.com, thejustphilosophy.com. The Just Philosophy, as discussed in this podcast, has been developed by Alexander over the last 25 years in his personal studies, private practice, and professional environment. The information discussed is intended for educational purposes only and is not meant as a replacement for conventional medicine. Just remember, knowledge plus experience equals wisdom. Seek the wise. We want to thank you for working on you. Keep shining your light and refining your vibe.